We're ready when you're ready.
I was waiting until 4 o'clock.
Sounds good.
Well, I do have 4 o'clock now, so let's call the Grand Marais Planning Commission meeting to order July 1st, 2020. Let the record show that Commissioners Hawkins, Greenwood, and Gary and Kennedy are present, along with Jeff Miller, our consultant, Mike Roth, our city administrator, Patrick Knight, our communications director, and Virginia Palmer as a visitor guest, I guess. We have an agenda before us. Are there any changes, additions to that agenda? If not, do we have a motion to approve the agenda or accept the agenda presented?
Also move.
Okay, motion by Greenwood. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Gary. Any further discussion? Hearing none, we will do a roll call vote, and I'm just going to do this based on my screen here, where you are. Commissioner Hawkins.
Aye.
Commissioner Greenwood.
Aye.
Commissioner Gary.
Aye.
And Commissioner Kennedy, myself, aye. The agenda has been set as submitted. We have minutes from our previous meeting. Any corrections or changes to that? If not, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Also move.
Again, motion by Greenwood,
And I'll second.
second by Gary. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, and again, Commissioner Hawkins,
Aye.
Commissioner Greenwood,
Aye.
Commissioner Gary,
Aye.
and Commissioner Kennedy, myself, aye. Motion passes. Minutes of the June 1st meeting have been approved as presented. Next item on the agenda is we have a couple public hearings. First is a variance request from Deb Smith. It's to create a lot from an existing lot less than the required minimum lot width. This is on the Creechville Road. There's a map in the application. Mike, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to this or describe what they're proposing.
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, but if anybody has any questions, I'd be happy to, or I'm sure Virginia would be happy to answer them.
And Virginia, you're representing the Deb Smith?
I am.
Okay. Is there anything you want to add to this? I mean, the request is, again, Mike said it's pretty straightforward. It's to take this 173 by 184 foot parcel that's zoned residential, R1 residential, that already has existing homes and cabins on it, and separate it into two separate parcels, one of which would be 59.5 feet in width, and which is less than the 75-foot required minimum lot width requirement.
So just as a comment, she has enough room to have created two legal lots without variance. But the issue was we tried to follow along with what the original legal description is, and the way the driveway is and where the other cabin is, it made sense to just use this as the lot line because it's relatively consistent with the neighborhood. It creates a better lot for the northerly parcel, especially with the existing improvements. So that's just just so you know why we're requesting it.
Okay. Commissioners, do you have any questions or comments?
Yeah, I have a question, I guess. This actually doesn't have to do with the variance so much as wondering if that cabin has or will have its own sewer, water, and that kind of thing. In what I received, it looked like it was hooked up to the house. And I know that when we've talked about having actual separate parcels, we've said that they have to have their own sewer, water, etc. And I'm wondering if that's going to get taken care of.
So we're discussing so in talking with Mike, that was one of the issues when we decided to list and market it, the property this way. So even though it says cabin on the original survey that we have here, we're only selling it as a bunkhouse. We've disconnected the water and the sewer that is connected to her main home. And the buyer is fully aware that they're going to need to hook up to their own water and sewer. You know, and part of that's just going to depend on exactly where they want to lay out the water sewer lines. So, yeah, good question. Thank you.
Yeah, very good. Thank you.
Can you just go over the setbacks on both parcels now in relation to where the buildings are?
I'm going to actually leave that to Mike Roth. Mike, I don't know our side setbacks on the city lot right off the top. I know that we were more than adequate with the main house and with the other cabin, which is why the lot line is almost halfway in between both. Are we a 10-foot side setback?
I think it's still quite a bit more than 10.
The minimum.
Yeah,
Right.
that's the minimum, and I think that all the buildings will meet and exceed those minimum requirements. The lot is almost 60 feet wide, and there's I'm not sure if that 18-foot setback is what they've actually got going on there, but I think it's about 15 left on the north side of the house on the small lot. So all the buildings there, although they didn't actually provide us with exact measurements of them, there's no question that they meet our existing setback requirements.
Any other questions or comments from commissioners? And this is a public hearing. Mike, have we received any other comments regarding this? And
No, we put notice in the newspaper and mailed notice to the adjacent or within 300 feet property owners. We know that notice was received because at least one of them thanked us for the notice, which also included some information about housing and had some questions about the housing stuff, but they didn't have any comments on this. So no comments received at City Hall.
and if somebody was wanting to participate, without submitting a written comment, is there a mechanism that they could have been part of this meeting?
No, of course, anyone's willing or able to monitor the meeting live stream as it's going on, but we don't have a mechanism where we're inviting folks to actually be a part of the discussion unless they're actually involved directly in the agenda item. So the notice that we sent to folks asked them to submit comments in writing, either just deliver them to City Hall or mail them to us or email them to us.
Okay, and nobody responded that was a hardship for them to do that in that fashion? I just want to make sure that everybody has had an opportunity to offer their comments, if they did have them, even though we don't have quite the same format for doing that.
Yeah, we haven't received any information from anybody that they wanted to participate in a different way. The only person that asked about participation was the applicant, which was a good reminder for us. Otherwise, we haven't heard from any of the neighbors.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, thoughts? Do we have a motion?
I move that we approve.
I'll second it.
Motion has been made by Commissioner Gary, seconded by Commissioner Greenwood, to approve the request for this variance. And you know that we have to make certain findings with regard to variance applications. Gotta find my. Oh, you didn't send that part out. There it is. I do have it. These are the findings we have to make: that the variance is in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance. The variance is consistent with the comprehensive plan. The proposal seeks to use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the zoning ordinance. The plight of the landowner is due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner. And the variance, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the locality. Anybody want to take a shot at those?
Well, Virginia did, thankfully, or Deb did in the application, so we can always take a look at what they said.
Yeah, and I think, you know, pretty consistently when we've dealt with these kind of situations, you know, we've talked about the variances being in harmony with the purpose and intent of the ordinance. Again, this is a residential area, and the uses that are being proposed are residential uses that would be consistent with that, which also addresses the second finding that needs to be made, that it's consistent with the comprehensive plan, again, because it's a residential area, that the uses are planned to be residential, that it is consistent with that. They're using would use the property in a reasonable manner not permitted by the zoning ordinance. I mean, these are all pretty consistently that that nothing really changes for the neighborhood. The property is already being used for residential purposes, will continue to be used for residential purposes. And that would seem to be a reasonable expectation in a residential area. I don't know about the plight of the landowner due to circumstances unique to the property, not created by the landowner, but I don't know how long Deb has owned that, but you know, those buildings have been there for a while. And I don't know if she created that situation, but obviously there's adequate land to do the type of residential activity that she's proposing for the two lots. And it's not going to alter the essential character because it is a residential use in a residential area. So unless anybody has anything to add to that.
It's worth pointing out that, of course, the next item on your agenda, were that to be enacted, would preclude the need for a variance in this case, because both of these lots would meet the suggested new lot sizes and setbacks as drawn.
Yeah, I didn't want to get into that conversation just because it kind of muddies the water. You know, if we base our decision on an ordinance that hasn't been adopted yet, but we seem to be heading in that direction. All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Okay, the motion is to approve the request with those findings, and that's a request to create a lot with a 59.5 foot width. Roll call vote. Commissioner Hawkins.
Aye.
Commissioner Greenwood.
Aye.
Commissioner Gary.
Aye.
And Commissioner Kennedy. Aye. Motion passes. This then would still be referred to the City Council for final action. We'll be on our next meeting, Mike. Okay, we'll be on
Next Wednesday.
Of next Wednesday, July 8th. Okay, the next item on our agenda, one we've all been waiting for a long time. Public hearing on the housing amendments to our zoning ordinance. I'm not sure where we start on this, Jeff or Mike. I mean, are we opening this up to public hearing comments first, or are we?
That's a good place to start, I think, and maybe Patrick just want to talk a little bit about the ways that we've publicized what's been going on here, and then we'll summarize with the grand total of no comments that we received.
So we started a few months ago with just introducing this idea in the newspaper and radio and videos. And over this last month, we've done a newspaper ad that says the draft is coming. Now the draft's here. Come take a look at it. We created a video that goes kind of over the history of this process, says that the draft is available and that comments will be accepted via email or in writing. And that video was distributed out via YouTube so that when people are watching YouTube videos or using different apps that are part of that network, it'll just pop up, and we got about 2,000 views and significantly more people who interacted with it for a brief period. So I would say people are aware of it. That's pretty much the strategies that we use.
And then just the last thing was we did put an ad in the paper with the legally required notification language, the same notification language that said if people have comments about this, that they can submit them in writing, either drop them off at City Hall, mail them to us, or either email them to us. We did receive, like I mentioned at the last public hearing, one comment that said, thanks for sending me that mailed notice. That's great. Where can I see more information about the housing ordinance? So that's all the comments we got. And then just a philosophical reminder, all this work that you've been doing that's been going on for a couple of years now is based on public engagement that we've been doing for years that's identified housing as a crucial issue that needs to be addressed. It's an issue that the council has set as a priority. It's an issue that you've adopted as a priority. And so even though there's not a lot of digging into the details of it when questions and comments from folks, we know that we're dealing with an issue that folks have told us time and again is important to them.
Commissioners, any thoughts?
So I just want to understand the process here. So this is our public hearing, and then supposedly we'll vote on it, but we're not done, right? We have more work to do. Or am I thinking wrongly?
Well, I would say, Stacy, that we were probably done with this phase of our conversations, and we identified a lot of things that could bear more discussion, conversation, and possible changes or inclusions within the ordinance that we didn't address in the draft that we have right now. So I'm not sure if that's what you're getting at, or I mean, we know what we proposed in terms of the changes. I think that if we take this action to make this recommendation to the city council, and the council approves this ends this portion of this project, and then we have to decide if there is another action that we choose to take or want to pursue once this is done.
I make a comment, Commissioner Greenwood. I think we've done what we set out to do. What the mayor asked us to do was to try to improve the chances for lower income housing. And I think we have done a great job, all of you, that has spent the time on this, and it's been a project that went well, and I think it's going to be beneficial to the city in the future years.
I agree. I think we did a good job. I'm proud of this document of what we put, all the work we put into it and what we have. I just don't think it's the end, and I just don't want to say, okay, we're done now, and we can forget we solved this problem, because I don't think that's totally true. And I would just hope that we, at some point, have a way to come back and say, okay, we know there's other issues we need to address, and let's start working on those also.
I do not agree with that assumption. I think we've put our work into it, and we should go ahead and proceed with it.
Yeah, and those ideas, of course, aren't mutually exclusive. I'm hearing from you, Stacy, that you agree with what Hal just said, but that you want to keep working on things. And I think that's just what the job of the Planning Commission is to keep identifying what issues they want to work on and digging in and working on them. And housing, passing this ordinance doesn't mean we stop talking about housing. It's still a critical issue. We have to wait and see how the results of this ordinance play out in the community, whether that makes the improvements we want to see or whether it doesn't, whether there are other steps that need to be taken. So I think absolutely this phase can be done. But even saying that doesn't mean that the ordinance is done and we never look at it again. It's a living document and you can always make changes to it. But there may be other strategies that you decide you want to look at as well, and we'll have to regroup and talk about what that is and what that means to each of you after we're done with this.
So just to be clear about the public hearing, I think we should include in the minutes that we did receive no comments regarding the draft for consideration at this meeting. And with that, is anybody ready to make a motion?
I am Commissioner Greenwood. I'm for it, and I make a motion to approve it.
All right, we have a motion by Commissioner Greenwood to approve the draft ordinance as presented.
And I'll second, like I usually do.
Commissioner Gary seconded that motion. Okay, any discussion?
We actually have a few last minute suggested changes that we wanted to go over with you. And we thought since we had a process where we were publicizing and we wanted to get the document in some format out, that we would just do that at the meeting rather than try to get them squeezed into the document. So I'm just going to turn it over to Jeff quick. He's going to go through just a couple of proposed changes.
Sure. Let's see. I don't know if I need to share my screen. I think I can just talk through them. So these are relatively minor, but they're things that we discussed. And so we just need to make there are considerations, I guess. Patrick, would it be easy for me to share my screen?
Sure.
Because then people could read them.
Yeah.
That might be better. So do that present now button, is that right?
Yep.
Tell me if something weird comes up from some other screen on my computer, please. And is it better to do entire screen?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Let's see. Are you seeing anything?
Not yet.
It's not saying to share. Let me try the other way.
There we
Can you
go.
see that?
Yep.
Okay. Let's see. I'll just go down these quick. So the front yard setback, what is in the draft that was distributed to you and the public. As you can see, we have an idea for some other language other than the average setback of developed lots on the same block face, whichever is less. Another way that language could be improved would be to say if 2 or more lots on the same block face have dwellings, the minimum setback shall be the setback of the dwelling closest to the street, and the maximum setback shall be the setback of the dwelling farthest from the street. I'll just go through all these quick, and then if you want to have a discussion, that we could do that. Corner yard setback, which means today in the ordinance, if you're on a corner, you have basically 2 front yard setbacks. One's called the front yard, one's called the corner yard. And what you could consider is adding that same language to that corner yard setback. So that's a detail, but that also would allow that to get smaller if the surrounding houses have smaller setbacks already. Lot coverage. I think it'd be good to consider increasing that from 30 to 50%. That's based on some drawings that we looked at, and because you're allowing smaller lot sizes, lot coverage might go up. We know that it can be at 30%, but it would probably allow more flexibility if you went up to 50%, especially in light of the fact that you're going to be allowing accessory dwelling units or ADUs. And for new housing types, particularly row houses, you would want to have a lot higher lot coverage, like 50%. So we kind of tested that out, and we would recommend that you look at a 50% number. For the ADU, we talked about raising the building heights from 16 to 20 for the ADU, and the maximum square footage from 800 to 1,000. So that's what you're seeing here in number 4. And then just a clarification about an ADU that's incorporated with a detached garage. Cottage courtyard housing, same thing about the height. It sounded like the commission was comfortable with going to 20 feet, same as for the ADU. Small apartment buildings, and looking at some drawings that we did to test that one out, we'd recommend that one not go down to the 5-foot setback on each side, but be 10 foot, same as large apartment buildings and same as townhouses. The manufactured home standards in there, since the draft went out, we've looked at that closer and feel that the standards that are in there today could be cleaned up, basically to get rid of all these unique things, which we discussed in the meeting, but we've verified that they could be removed, and just say that manufactured homes have to conform with the Manufactured Home Building Code, which is in state statutes. It does not get rid of the standards for the manufactured home park. Those will still be in there. This would just be an individual unit. So an individual manufactured home is subject to all the standards of a stick-built home or a modular home. And then lastly, we talked a lot about the RCN district, which runs up 5th Avenue, and maybe that could be replaced with the mixed use district. We did look at that closer, and while that might be something that could happen, it would take a little bit more work than we'd want to tackle right now. So for right now, the RCN district is staying. And what we did change about the mixed use district and looking at it is simply to change the uses from one family versus multifamily to include the new housing types. So the townhouses and ADUs and that sort of thing. So with that, you guys are free to discuss what you want. as tweaks to what the draft has in it now.
So changing that height from 16 feet to 20 feet, just curious for ADUs, why?
That was based on your discussion at your last meeting. So it sounds like people felt has experience with 20 feet being a more realistic height for a story and a half, which is basically what we're trying to do is typically cities want accessory dwelling units and cottage courtyard houses to be, the intent is for them to be smaller housing units. So preventing them from being 2-story houses when the original house might be 1 story. But 20 feet was just the number that was suggested at the last meeting. So in any case, we'd probably make them the same. So whether it's 16, 18, or 20, I guess it's your decision.
Yeah, and I think the conversation we had at the last meeting had to do with, kind of the small footprint of the home. If you built a 1.5-story structure, you might want to allow for that additional height so you can get a pitched roof that, functions for a 1.5-story home.
That's correct, Tim.
So Mike, if we, agreed to all of these changes, how does that work with incorporating that into the ordinance before we actually send it on to the council?
Well, we'll incorporate this into the language that is in the ordinance that's presented to the council. So hopefully that'll all be done tomorrow and part of the council's packet.
Okay, so can we get the motion to be amended to incorporate all of these changes if that's agreeable to Commissioner Greenwood and Commissioner Gary?
It's agreeable to me.
Yep, I'm good for that.
Okay, so the motion has been amended to incorporate these changes into the zoning ordinance requirements. Presentation to the city council. Any further discussion? Hearing none. I'm going to call the question then. Motion has been made to approve the amendments to the Grand Marais ordinance, zoning ordinance, with these additional changes. I'm going to run down the line. Oh, everybody's been switched in position. Commissioner Gary.
Aye.
Commissioner Greenwood.
Aye.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Aye.
And Commissioner Kennedy. Aye. You guys have it. We're moving this on to the city council. A lot of good work. Jeff, thank you for being the driver of this. We appreciate all the hard work that you've done listening to us and coming up, solution to the differences that we may have had. But I think we're on the right track. This charge we were given, and hope the council will, be likewise. I think that's all the business we had. Unless anybody else has any other comments or anything else to offer. Not hearing anything, then we are adjourned. Thank you very much. A lot of good work.
Yeah,
Thank
Thanks,
you.
everybody.
Bye all.